All right, everybody, let's make a delicious cottage pie for dinner. An absolute favorite of mine. I could eat this every single week. We're going to get started with blanching our potatoes and carrots for about just under 10 minutes. We're going to add a neutral oil to our Dutch oven on medium-high heat and let that warm up while we remove our potatoes and carrots and put them aside for the next step. Now, they shouldn't be cooked all the way. We just want to get them semi-soft so that when we do a final bake, they will finish cooking off in the pan later on. So let's start our beef mixture with 1 onion, and we're just going to sweat these off and reduce the acidity before going in with our garlic. And we'll stir this around for a few minutes until garlic is aromatic, and then we want to go in with our beef. Now this is about 15% fat. You can use a beef lamb mixture or just pure lamb if you want to do a shepherd's pie, but I generally have more beef, and so we're making a cottage pie. And what I'm doing here is I really just want to incorporate the onions and the garlic into the beef as I am spreading it out and making sure it's cooked through. Add a little bit of salt here and pepper for seasoning and continue stirring it up until the water starts to release from the beef. And you'll see here in just a moment that it starts to basically boil. You'll see the water boiling that has come out of the beef, and that'll end up cooking the beef. And in a lot of cases, you could stop there. And actually, a lot of people do stop here. Is when the beef is cooked, it's fully cooked. Let's move on to the next step. But if you take just an extra 10 minutes, evaporate that water off, you'll start to hear more of a singe, and it'll sound less like a boil, and you see less liquid here. And you'll hear the beef singeing, and that is the beef rendering, which deepens the flavor of the beef. And so this is just another way we can build flavor in a dish. If you have the time, I recommend just taking an extra 10 minutes or so and evaporating off some more of the liquid. So here we're just going to go in with 10 grams of flour for texture and color and get that stirred around. We're going to put in some beef base, which is going to provide another flavor into our mixture, and just get that incorporated along with our tomato paste. And once these are fully incorporated with each other, you'll start to see the beef turning color and clumping together a little bit more. And next is our Worcestershire sauce, and this will cook off for a couple minutes. You want to keep stirring, and we don't want any parts of the beef to overcook or over caramelize, so we want to keep a good stir going. And then we're going to go in with about 500 milliliters of water. And we're not using any beef stock or vegetable stock or anything like that. Just water is fine, because we have already done a great job of building flavor into the beef. I want to bring this to a boil and stir until this starts to thicken up and the liquid starts to evaporate off. And it's a personal choice as to how much liquid you leave in the mixture. Some people like their cottage pie a little more runny, others like it a little more thick. I went with kind of somewhere in the middle here, and it's really just personal preference. But once I get this into this pan, I want to essentially just spread it out evenly and build a nice base layer that we're going to then put our carrots and potatoes that we blanched earlier on top of. And I'm not putting anything on the pan first. I haven't sprayed it. I haven't put anything down. It's just straight in with our beef. All right, next is we have brought back our carrots and potatoes that we have half cooked. And we just want to start spreading those out evenly and distributing them evenly on top of our beef base. There we go, almost done here. And once we're done with the carrots and potatoes, we're going to go in with our frozen peas next. And so these are straight from the freezer. They don't need to be warmed up or anything, just straight in. And we're going to put all of them in and do our best to evenly distribute them over the mixture as well. And just take a little extra time and try to find those little spots where you can still see beef and cover it up before lightly pressing down flat. Not too hard, just gently flattening out the top surface so that these carrots, potatoes, and peas settle in nicely. And we're going to put that to the side, and while we do, we're going to start on our mashed potatoes. And it's important that we let that beef mixture that we just put aside rest adequately, because once we finish with our mashed potatoes, it's going to become super important for us to be able to distribute those and move them around on top of the beef mixture without it moving underneath everything. And you'll see why here in a second. But just for the base of our mashed potatoes, real simple. Just going to add some butter into the pan. And I actually don't even have the heat on. It's still warm from the mashed potatoes. A little bit of half and half, a little bit of milk. And we'll go in with a little bit of salt as well. And some garlic powder. But season this however you prefer. It's totally up to you. I just like to keep it simple here. I generally don't spend a whole lot of time on the mashed potatoes, as these always turn out delicious. Now you can use your stand mixer, whatever is best for you. I just generally go in with a potato masher and get it done this way. It just seems easier and then less work than using the stand mixer. But however you want to do it is perfect. You just want to end up with a consistency that's easy to move around and isn't clumpy, and you want to just make sure you can try to get an even consistency throughout that you can easily move around and manipulate on top of the beef base. So in this next step, you'll see I tend to put 4 globs of the mashed potatoes on top, kind of one in each corner, one in each quadrant, and then we'll use that to flatten everything out and try to get as flat as we can before our next step. If it's giving you problems and sticking too much to the bottom of your spatula or whatever you might be using, you can always dip it in some water and that helps. I generally don't need to do that, but I have had to do that in the past. It's just, if you happen to come across that, then just use a little water and it's totally fine. So I'm just going around the edges here and trying to get everything in a uniform look and flatten everything out to where we can score our mashed potatoes. And we're just going to use a fork with that and gently glide it across the top of the mash. And I'm not pressing down. So really you're just using the weight of the fork and pulling across. Very simple. Otherwise, you could inadvertently pull out a larger chunk than you want. I like to just go in with some flaky salt on top. Not too much, but it just adds a nice little texture. Here's a dash of pepper as well on top. I think makes for a nice ending look, and it tastes good. So I'm going in for about 30-ish minutes at 400 degrees. The typical recipe calls for about 30 minutes at 375, but I like a hotter oven, and it just generally gives me the color that I like to see on top. You want a nice brown top. It should be relatively even across, and you shouldn't have too much liquid that seeps into the mashed potatoes to stain the mashed potatoes, which has happened before. But this is exactly how it should look. Comes out beautifully. And here we are. We're just going to plate and give this a taste. It is always a treat. One of the best comfort meals you can have. Truly, I hope you try this out and would love to hear about your experience if you do. And if you like this video and like the videos, please give me a subscribe. I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much. Bye.